So about a month ago we posted a video here on our YouTube channel called Installing and Configuring a PowerStation, and we'll link to it here at the top of this video. Today we're going to do part 2 of that and go a little bit further in depth into the configuration side. We need to add some sources and start creating our show profiles and that kind of thing. So let's jump into it, configuring an Axia PowerStation here at our new downtown studio. All right, so for starters, this is the main screen when you have come to the IP address of your PowerStation, and you can see the main status screen without authenticating, but any other links that we go into here are going to require us to authenticate. So let's just run down through all of the side menus here. We'll start with the setup screen. By default, the login information is user is the username with no password. And on the setup tab, you can see that we've given this a host name, an IP address, subnet, and default gateway. Here is also where you could change the password for your web UI. The next link is the user manual for the PowerStation, and below that we start to get into under the console heading, the meat of the configuration, if you will, here. And so let's jump into the sources tab. And this is where we would go to create any sources that we wanted to create and make available to us on this PowerStation. There's a couple that we've added already for monitoring's sake. We'll add a few more so we can show you some of those. So the first thing I want to do is add all of the sources that we might consider to be for our external monitors. These are the kind of things that you would have normally brought into like an external monitor section of your old analog consoles. So like your off-air monitors, for instance, other studios, program buses perhaps that you want to be able to listen to, not bring up on individual channels necessarily on the console, but to be able to listen to on one of the Axia console's external inputs. So we've got a couple of air monitors already. Let's go ahead and add a few more things that we might want to listen to here. So to do that, we would click the Create a new source profile button. Under the source type, we have a lot of options here, which we'll get into as we add each one of these sources later. But for now, these air monitors and things that we're adding are simply line inputs. And the next thing that we're going to add, we're going to call Talk Show Program. Talk Show P1, we'll call it, for Program 1. And this is going to be the Program 1 bus of the Talk Show studio over across town at our other facility. So now I'm going to sort through. If you click on the little drop-down box to the right of the primary source window, it's going to give you a big list of sources that are available. And these are all of the sources that it can see on your existing LiveWire network. I happen to know the studio that we're working on across town, the Program 1 bus that we're interested in, is 240. So I'm going to select that. That's Program 1 at Studio 2 across town. It's a stereo source, normal phase. A lot of this stuff doesn't matter on specific sources like this. This is an interesting box here, this source availability box. What I'm going to tell it here, this allows us to add restrictions to where the specific source is able to be utilized on this console. And because this is an external source, I don't want it necessarily to be able to be brought up on specific input channel faders, but I do want it to be available in the control room and studio monitors section of this console. So we'll go ahead and leave that as it is here, those two selected. Fader mode, preview mode, none of this matters for this specific source that we're adding. And when we're done with all of this, we simply OK at the bottom. And we now have a new source added to this list. So that's an example of adding something that we would use as an external source. So now let's go ahead, I'll show you an example of creating a source for a remote broadcast equipment, or a codec as it's called in the Axia world. Basically, there's a sequence of steps here to creating a remote equipment input because of the way that Axia handles the automatic mix-minus creation and foldback routing to these remote devices, saving you from having to manually create mix-minus buses and routing them manually. So let's go ahead and create a piece of remote equipment here. So we'll create a new source profile again, except this time in the source type heading, we're going to create a new codec. We're going to call this, because of our internal naming scheme here, we're going to call this Telos A. This happens to be a Telos Zephyr ISD unit that we've called Telos A. And I'll click the drop down beside the primary source box and we'll scroll down until we can find it. I know what region of numbers it's in our building over there. It's 2027, a Telos at analog node in the WAJR control room. Okay, it's a stereo source, normal phase, all this stays the same. We could add some processing to it here in this section if we knew how we wanted to adjust these parameters, but we don't currently. So I'm going to leave that alone, and I'll show you how we can add some processing to it later once it's in the console. We'll leave the equalizer alone, and we'll allow this source to be called up on any of the input faders, but not directly as an external source in the control room and studio monitors. And I do this just to keep the list of sources that are available as external monitor source at a reasonable level that we can manage. Normal fader mode, pre-fader Q, when you put it in the Q bus, these would all be most normal settings here. And we'll use the default backfeed options. Feed source is program 1 or phone. That simply means that when you pull this Telos source up on the console, if it is not turned on, it's going to get a mix. It's going to get the program 4 bus, anything that's assigned to program 4. But as soon as you turn the channel on, if it's assigned to program 1, it's going to get a program 1 backfeed minus itself, which is the desired behavior for a codec source. So we'll go ahead and say OK. And that is how we would add a codec to this console. Let's go ahead and create another source profile. This time, let's create the microphone that is sitting here beside me in the host position of this studio. This is the operator. The control surface is here. This is the operator position. Let's go ahead and add its mic as a source. We would choose operator microphone in this case, and we would call it host mic for this studio. We'll look up its primary source here. Again, I happen to know that it's going to be in the 1, 2, let's see here. Yeah, 1, 2, 4, 1's the host mic position. This is normal. It's a stereo source, even though it's a microphone. We'll talk about that later. We will be using mic processing, but I'll again show you later how we set that up once we've got this source assigned to the console. It's much easier to do in that way than it is doing it here, unless you've set one up already, an exact mic, and know how you want to preset all these. We'll uncheck controller monitor and studio monitor, but still let this mic be assigned to any of the channels in here, and we will say OK to that one as well. And while we're here, let's go ahead and add the first guest microphone. So we'll go back to create a new source again. This is a control room guest microphone in this case, and we're going to call this guest 1. And we'll scroll on down here again. It was 1, 2, 4, 2 is Spruce Guest 1. This is just a microphone node that we have in the furniture in this room. All these settings remain the same. Deselect control room and studio monitors, but allow it to be assigned to any channel, and say OK. All right, we'll get back to more sources later, not during the video, that we have to add for this room. The next tab down on the left, shows. This would be where you will create show profiles. Again, we're going to show you something cool later about how we capture a profile after we've created one the way we want it. The modules tab is informational more than it is functional. It gives us an overview here of all of the various modules that are installed in the surfaces that are connected to this power station. So as you can see, we have a phone module, and we have a 4-channel fader module, and things are working normally there. Script information, don't know, never used it. Log settings, you can decide if you have a syslog server that you want to use for Logging, you've got your various classes of logging, when it should write, under what conditions, and how to do all that. The customized screen gives you an option to change this logo to a logo that you want to add to the the VU meters and configuration screen. You will do that at some other point. It gives you specific file size and type specifications. The clock settings are here. If you have an NTP server, this is where you would select that. We do, and it is synced. And also a few other settings about the GUI. You'll have a different, if you're using Fusion console, you'll have a different option for a different screen if you have a widescreen monitor. And it's very cool. Currently it's set to the default, which you'll see when we get to the screenshot here in a second. And then some various fader options and other customization options at the bottom of that screen. The screenshot tab does exactly what it says. You can see here it grabs a screenshot of the current, what's currently on the meter screen. 6:01 p.m., that's terribly wrong. We're 4 hours off, so we should go back to the customized screen here and adjust our time zone offset so that perhaps we'll get the correct time. I don't know how long that takes to update, maybe the next minute, but we're definitely off there. Okay. On below, we're going into the mix engine setting now of the screen, section of the config. This is literally just a status screen again, showing you what is assigned to what faders, what the headphone returns are if you have guest mic set up with headphone returns, feed to source output, so if you've got codecs or other remote gear dialed in with back feeds, all of that will be displayed here. We'll come back to the screen after we've set up our console a little bit further. Return and monitor sections inputs here, same thing, showing you what is currently selected on the control room monitor and headphone section, just a status page. And then we get to program and monitor outputs. This we did in the first video where we assigned channel numbers to all of these program bus and monitor output buses. You can see that the IP address of this power station that we're working on ends in .121. You also notice that all of these channel numbers start with 121 until we run out of ones, and then we start in 122s. This is simply to prevent channel conflicts on our Axia network by making sure that everything has a unique channel number. Super important. That's why we did that. This is also where you would turn on or off these various program buses and whether they would be live or standard stereo. A word of advice would be the live stereo versus standard stereo. Live stereo is ultra low latency, so things that people will be monitoring, operators will be monitoring in headphones while they're talking or in other absolutely time-sensitive applications. Like in our case, this is a radio for television studio, meaning that lip synchronization with audio is critical. So buses and sources that need to be perfectly time-aligned, we use live stereo for. So that would be like microphones, program buses, headphone buses. But things that do not need to be live stereo, that are not absolutely time-sensitive sources, which for us is basically like everything else, the preview bus, our automation playback machines, CD machines. Use standard stereo. It's a lot less load on the LiveWire network, and it's just good practice to use standard stereo when you can. And it's also good practice to disable sources that you are not using. For instance, on this page, we have disabled all of the aux buses. We don't anticipate using them in this room. And so those things are disabled here. The next section, VMixer and vMode. Super powerful. None of these are set up yet. That's not true. One of them is. So I'll show you what this is. Basically, every power station gives you 16 virtual mixers, each with 5 inputs. It's exactly what it sounds like. You can assign multiple sources to these virtual mixers, and it will sum them together and give you an output of that summed mix bus. Very, very useful for a lot of applications. You can also control these with a lot of your wide orbit automation systems and other automation systems. We do that in a lot of our markets in lieu of physical switching. So one thing we always use a VMix for in virtually every studio that we create is our control room monitoring. We have one set of control room monitors in this control room that we need to send several sources to. We need to be able to send the actual control room monitor output of the console. We need to also mix in there the preview bus of the console, which prevents us from having to use another preview speaker, as well as our wide orbit automation system preview. We need that bus also sent into the same set of control room monitors. So to do that, we create a VMix. And in this VMix, we've simply specified those three sources that I talked about, our wide orbit preview, the control room monitor output of this console, and the preview bus of this Axia Fusion console are all three sources that we'll turn on this VMix and apply. We would also channel number this VMix. The reason it's currently not on is because we haven't assigned channel numbers, but we would route then that output, that VMix submix output would be the source that we would feed to our control room monitors in this studio, and then all these three preview sources would always be in the preview buses. V-mode, real quick at the bottom of this screen, there are some very practical uses for V-mode, and one of them that we use quite regularly, V-mode basically allows you to select a source and then modify it in some way, which I'll show you in a moment. The most practical source that we've found for using V-mode is in instances where we have a live stereo stream. If you remember, like we talked earlier about the reason that we need our Program 1 buses to be live stereo is because talent monitors them in their headphones while speaking. There are some cases where I cannot pass a live stereo stream, like across microwave lengths out to other transmitter sites, just because of potential latency. It's far more robust to do that as standard stereo. So V-mode allows you to take a source, really any source on the LiveWire network, or you can take like Program 1 from this console. Then you have some options of what you want to do with it. You want to pass the stereo, upmix from left or right, or summed, break it out from a 5.1, combine them, sum them together, left only on both channels, left and right together, or just simply pass stereo. And then what type of output stream do you want it to be? Standard stereo is what I would say in this case. So in essence, all we would have done with that line would have been taken the Program 1 stream that will remain live stereo everywhere that it's selected here, but created a second stream of Program 1 that is standard stereo that we could then use to traverse microwave links or various other type of latent networks that we may be using to move a LiveWire network around. Super cool. We use VMixer in a lot of cases. I'm not going to talk about Intercom because I'm not an expert in that. We don't use Axia's Intercom system. I've played with it a bit in Las Vegas the last couple of years. Super cool. We'd like to maybe look into that down the road. If you have a chance to check it out, it's pretty neat. It allows you basically to do some really cool studio-to-studio intercoms and things of that nature. There are ways to do that existing hardware, with Axia hardware and some soft buttons. Not quite the same functionality, but maybe we'll do a video. We're doing that in a couple markets. Maybe we'll do a trick on that at some point. The options tab, you know, just a handful of options. Source sharing, stuff that we never mix with, we've never messed with, so we're gonna leave that alone. Streamstats, we would have some cool stuff in here if we had stuff going on this console. Would be good to look through. You can kind of track down some network problems if you're having stream stability statistics, or you've got some glitches and whatnot in your audio. The network tab is just that, host name, IP address, subnet mask. System tab has some just general kind of monitoring information, as well as backing up your config and restoring configs, also restarting the console if you need to, and firmware upgrades. All of that is on the system tab. And diagnostics tab is just that. You can download some diagnostics information, clear it, those kind of things on that tab. All right, we're getting down to the bottom section of the config now. This is going to be where we're going to look at the actual analog and digital inputs and outputs of the PowerStation itself, so the actual audio I/O. The sources tab basically is that. It's kind of like a node. It's the internal I/O that exists in the PowerStation. And you can see we have 8 inputs. The first 2 are microphone on XLR inputs. And then we have 4 analog audio inputs and 2 AES inputs. And this is where we would assign channel numbers for those, what type of stream they are, standard versus live stereo. The destinations tab below that is where we would look at the outputs of the PowerStation. There are 8 outputs, 6 analog, 2 AES. There's some general options there where we would pick what channel, what Axia Livewire channel number we want to route out that output. Whether it's a from or to source, which refers to whether or not it is a codec or some other device that we want to automatically generate mix minus back feeds to. So in most of these cases, you'll see these are from sources, except our Skype box, which is a talk show box made by NewTek for our video control room that allows us to do Skype calls. That is a to source because we will be generating a mix minus to that. Next, we have the GPIO tab here on the PowerStation. That is what it says. There is GPIO closures in and out for various things. We use it for microphone tallies. That is definitely a separate video that we're not going to go down the road of configuring mic lights in this case. Lots of very cool things you can do with your GPIO I/O. The meters tab is just what it says. I can't believe I clicked it. Oh, that's right, they fixed it in the PowerStation. Formerly Java that worked on about 0.1% of computers in the entire universe, but the new metering is much, much better. This is actually analog and digital, your I/O metering basically for audio. And then we get into system, which is IP address information. You'll notice it's different. The actual audio I/O section has a different IP address than the PowerStation itself. Same way with firmware. And the QoS tab for the PowerStation, which specifies the normal things. Clock priority, clock mode. Most things you will not mess with unless you're doing fairly custom applications there. The aux I/O subsystem we don't use. That would be if you had a secondary PowerStation or a secondary set of I/O that you were using. And then the Ethernet switch options at the bottom just simply specify whether or not the gigabit ports on the back of the thing are access ports or trunk. They're, in most configurations, will be a trunk port. And then the system tab at the bottom for that is literally the system section of the Ethernet switch. There won't be much that you'll do in there except potentially firmware upgrades. So now that we've done all of that work, let's go ahead and show you the configuration here of the console. We'll assign some channels to the console so that I can show you how we'll capture a show profile with all of our channel settings already engaged. So I'm going to show you the screen here by doing a screenshot while I assign some channels to the board. So I'm going to push down on the rotary encoder at the top of a channel, which is going to bring up this screen. And I'm going to dial over until I get to the current source, which I'll then push in the rotary encoder. And the first thing I want to do is put my host mic here on the console. So I'll push in on that first knob. And now I have my host mic assigned to this channel of the console. Beside of it, I'll push the rotary encoder. And I want this to be a guest mic, let's say. This will be guest 1. And then I'll push the rotary knob inside of it. I'll select this, and I'll make this be Telos A. Okay, so now that we have some sources assigned to our console, we could then make modifications to the host mic, like we talked about saving processing. And the way we would do that would be select the host mic, and using the rotary knobs on the right-hand side of the console, they correspond to the rotary knobs at the bottom. So if we wanted to make some processing adjustments, like let's say we wanted to modify some compression here, we would do that simply by turning on the compressor, turning down the threshold until it engages with normal spoken word. I won't be able to show this very well because you can't hear the, you can't currently hear the compressor being activated, but it is indeed compressing currently. And then after we have done that, we can make some changes, do what we needed to do while listening, of course. And then you can save the profile. So if this was the console layout that we liked, we could go back. So once you've got everything laid out how you want it on your console, including monitor sources, everything, it's going to capture the entire snapshot, including processing options and other things that you've selected for your microphones. You would simply go into the UI under Shows. You would say Capture Show Profile and give it a name. I'm going to call this Test because I'm going to delete it. And hit Save. And now on your console, when you go to load a new show profile, you can restore this layout exactly how it was when you captured it. Makes it super convenient if you have various announcers who are using the same console who want different layouts or also different mic processing options that you may want to set up for your various talent. It's a super easy way to do that using that. We'll do a couple of other episodes. We have an episode actually on mic processing that you can watch. We'll also pop a link up to that video here now. And we'll dig in. We'll do a special video soon on how we do intercom with our Livewire network without doing intercom the way that they ask us to do it. So hope it's been helpful for you. As always, send an email to ask@theradiotechguys.com with questions, and we'd be happy to address them in future videos. Thanks for watching.